Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian.
How are you getting on?
Grand, thanks, yeah.
We had a bit of interaction earlier on because we were setting forward to the fact that Jeremy Guscott and Jonathan Davies are going to be in the studio a little bit later on, and I described them as two of the greatest Six Nations players of all time, and Owen pulled me up to say that why was I not including you in that mix?
You were dead right. They're two legends of the Six Nations. Jonathan Davies is looking a little bit worse for wear out there. Yeah, I think he enjoyed a little bit of hospitality last night.
Pulling back the curtain.
You can check that out with him when he comes in. But yeah, they've plenty of historic stories, I'm sure, to tell you in a little while.
Yeah, we'll have a bit of a chat about that. I wonder, before we get into the meat and drink of Ireland-Wales this weekend, if we're going to be sitting here again in 5 weeks' time, Quinny, debating as to when this is all going to come right for Ireland. Like, it feels like we've been having this conversation about the Irish funk for longer than we need to have, and there isn't any great indicators that it's going to end anytime soon.
Yeah, it does feel like that because obviously this time last year, we were on a high, such a high after all that happened in 2018, and started off poorly against England, and they got back on track against Scotland, and they stuttered their way through. Poor performance in Italy. France was a bit better again. There was 3 bad games and 2 good ones, and even though it was 3 wins out of the 5, the whole year was just a bit of a struggle, really, and a number of factors. Teams figuring Ireland out, Ireland dropping maybe the intensity and the accuracy and the pace that they were doing things as well, and maybe a bit of a dip in form from a number of players added to that. So there's pressure and there's a bit of baggage, and that's kind of a little bit of psychological baggage. But if you're the optimist and you want to believe that they're going to get back on track, we've started Six Nations slow before, and the Grand Slam in 2018, France was far from a perfect result, the Johnny Sexton drop goal at the end, so they started a little bit slow. So I'm hopeful that they can change a couple of gears tomorrow and play a lot better. If it doesn't happen, does that affect the players out in the field, and do that bit of confidence kind of drain out of them as well, and does the scars that they've had to endure in 2019, do they come back to kind of affect that confidence?
And they quietly start to question the new coaching setup, obviously, at some point.
Well, that's going to take time. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It's going to take time.
Do players give it time, right? So, like, we obviously look in and we can't affect things one way or the
they've got
other.
to believe what the coaches tell them. You've in international rugby, you've very little time to iron every detail out. You hope you can get better on the run and that you can get positive results. So that's what they did. They got the win last week.
But in your experience, when a new coaching ticket comes in and things aren't, I don't know if you'd ever been through that, where things haven't been exactly as they might have been over the first few games, obviously in the press they're going to say, listen, you got to give this time, they're going to say all the right things. But privately, at what point are they saying, I'm really not sure about this?
It takes a bit of time. The players have got to give it time as well. It's not as if you're kind of ripping up a script and doing everything totally different. The fundamentals have to be right, the foundation, the set piece, the scrum line-out, which the scrum wasn't great last week. There was a few penalties there against Ireland. Line-out was decent, but the maul wasn't great, and I think there was one line-out that Ireland won, the 22, Peter O'Mahony, great throw to the tail, 60th minute or something, and they're trying to get them all rumbling, build pressure, which the team was kind of renowned for when they were winning, and Hamish Watson slips in into the middle of them all and takes the ball, and those kind of moments that hurt you as a pack of forwards, because they're crucial moments that you've got to try and deliver a platform for your backline to attack and at least come away with some sort of a score. So we spoke earlier during the week about Scotland's emotion being through the roof. That was always going to happen, and Ireland were just a little bit passive defensively, not getting off the line, not winning the dominant tackles. So there's lots of things that you can. It's a bit of an attitude thing, and it's a mental thing that Ireland need to make sure that all those things are better tomorrow, because Wales dominated them last year in those collision areas, in the pressure game.
Come back to that in a second. The flatness of it. Sexton was talking about in the papers this morning about before the Scotland game. They were out doing the warm up, and on the way in, he was like, "Lads, we need to lift this. That it feels all a bit flat." Like, where's that coming from?
That can happen. It might be a confidence thing. It might be people just keeping their head down a little bit, hoping that things go well, rather than really kind of I suppose, driving it themselves to stay. And it's understandable. When any team loses in any sport, Adrian, it's hard to, you know, they're having to deal with the questions with the public since they've come back from the World Cup. You know, and that does play in your mind a little bit.
Do you think there's a World Cup hangover then? Is that the... I mean, we talk about England in that
hangover,
regard,
but I think one big performance can get you back on track a little bit. We thought that was the Scotland game in Yokohama in the first game would really ignite the team, and you know, they went backwards, I suppose, with the loss to Japan a week later. So it depends. There's pressure and there's expectation there. I'd rather, as a player, have that pressure and expectation than not. But I think they don't need any cause for tomorrow. Obviously, it's a big Six Nations game and you always want to win them. But Wales ruffled them up last year, so there has to be a real motivation and an aggression brought to tomorrow's game, because if Wales start well, they're a confident side and they get in the front foot, they play a good brand of rugby, they throw the ball around and they can hurt you with pace in their game. So Ireland have got to be really aggressive early on and start the game well tomorrow. I think that's really imperative, that not necessarily on the scoreboard, but just their body language, their energy, their enthusiasm and just an intent out of them. They've got to let Wales know that it's going to be very, very difficult in Dublin tomorrow.
Were you surprised to see that Ireland are 4-point favourites going into this game?
A little bit, yeah, particularly when you look at the performances last week. There's probably two ways of looking at this, on how good were Wales last week and you know, how bad were Ireland, if you want to use that term. Ireland struggled a little bit, and maybe that's been disrespectful to Scotland, because Scotland, you know, if Scotland go and beat England tomorrow, which England are on a bit of a backlash scenario themselves after losing in France. If Scotland were to win, we'll all start saying, geez, that was a really good Scottish team, and Gregor Townsend now has found, you know, better players and he's making 10 changes. So we'll know more tomorrow evening how good or bad it was. Maybe it was a great win. Maybe we look back and say it's a great win. If Ireland lose tomorrow, well, the pressure is going to heap on the team and the group, and there'll be a massive call for way more change in personnel. But
because that's because of what happened last year as well, that especially if Wales win healthily in Dublin tomorrow, it's back-to-back Six Nations where they've beaten Ireland well. You're kind of looking at a certain coterie of players and you're thinking to yourself, are they capable of getting us back to a championship competing level again? Because we probably think that we're a mile off England on last year's evidence, maybe not, but certainly if it's back-to-back batterings from Wales, you definitely have to be asking those questions. Yeah,
you would, and it's bad news for the players, because there's a number of them they could be chopped after that, and that's just the reality. If we lose tomorrow, well, you're in a situation then where a Grand Slam is gone, a Triple Crown is gone, maybe a championship is gone as well, and you're going to Twickenham to play England, and if we were to lose, it's hypothetical now, but it could happen. Wales are a very good side, and that's going to heap more pressure on. But I just think that the motivation, the desire individually and collectively has to be massive tomorrow, because sometimes that can drive you on the what ifs, and that has to be a factor tomorrow. I think, you know, Wales are a side who won't fear coming to Dublin. They're not, you know, they're not fearing this game tomorrow. I think they'll be very conscious and aware that Ireland have the massive potential to get better, and I believe they will get better. And but I'm still, when you look at the Welsh side, I think Tipuric, Wainwright, Faletau, Alan Wynne-Jones, Jake Ball, that five can do a lot of damage against Ireland tomorrow, and that's an area that we have to, James Ryan, Henderson, our back row, they really need to have positive moments tomorrow and set the tone.
Because Wales can do a number on you, and like we were talking about the style almost of, I suppose, Ireland's development under Andy Farrell. Pivac likes to play this very quick pass, gets the ball away from the crash side as quick as they can. This sort of two-pass rule almost, I think that they had at Scarlett is looking like it's a thing he's going to do with Wales as well. Like, they can really hurt you, and that, I know you're writing tomorrow about the kind of dominant tackle area from an Irish point of view, but it's very evident that that's going to be potentially the winning and losing of this game tomorrow.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be crucial. You know, for any team, it's you know, I remember doing the game last year, England France in Twickenham, and England won, I think, 44-8 against France. Totally dominated them, obliterated them off the field. They kicked the ball 44 times in the game. Nobody leaving the stadium that day was complaining about the kicking or the style. It was just relentless pressure, and it was just forcing scores, forcing France to make opposition mistakes in the back field, to run it back, to be turned over. You know, it wasn't that they played this continuous, expansive, wonderful rugby. So to stop Wales, you know, if you allow Wales play, of course they can really hurt you. And at the World Cup, they were brilliant in the first half. Their tempo, their pace, their clean out. And if they get on that front foot and the ball is really quick, they move the ball very well, and it's hard to defend for anybody. So for Ireland, I think it's particularly around that dominant tackle area, and you know, we've lost the vast majority of the dominant tackle counts since that game in Grand Slam win in Twickenham 2 years ago, which you look at last week, Scotland had 27 dominant tackles to our 18, and that just, it kind of, sometimes stats can lie, because Ireland played Italy the Grand Slam year, and they won 56-19. Italy had 24 dominant tackles, Ireland had 16. Italy didn't have the ball, you know what I mean? So that kind of, sometimes the scoreline, when it's massive, it can skew the stats. But in the closer games, the games that you look at and you go off the field and you say Ireland were second best in those collision areas. I know Andy Farrell was asked about it this week. The dog is there. We spoke about it last week as well. They have the capability of being a physical group of players. But for me, it's up front as a unit. They've got to just hunt a bit better and be on the front foot and smash people a little bit more around the sides of breakdowns, because if you're soaking tackles, it's hard to slow down that breakdown.
Yeah, and a lot of players under pressure, obviously, to deliver in this game tomorrow. I think a strong performance of Conor Murray would suddenly take a lot of those question marks away as well. Not much time left. What, 4-point spread you were saying?
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
I don't know. I'm quite nervous about this, and I look at the Welsh side, and you know, it's hard to call it because that performance last week, we're not really sure. A part of me thinks it's a little bit unfair that it was a good win. It was incredibly intense, and another part of me thinks it should be better. So Ireland just need to be better tomorrow, and if they are, I think they'll win the game. But I'm quite fearful. So Wales, you know, Wales are a very good side, and unless we really kind of take them on up front and are aggressive with them, we lose the game.
You spoke about England and their backlash, and that's going to come this weekend. Do Ireland have that ability to create an unbelievable backlash where you're like, right, if everybody's on song, they will crush everybody in front of them? Because it seemed that there was a couple of opportunities last year for a backlash. You know, go and beat Wales, which they didn't take advantage of, or go and put in a good performance against the All Blacks after a tough start to the World Cup.
They have that capability, but it's one thing being capable of doing it and doing it. I think there was so much going on probably in their heads last year, and they just couldn't get out of that rut that they were in. That was, you know, going back to type, slowing the game down when the pressure came on. You can slow the game down. Like if Ireland are 10 points up tomorrow and they're being really good with their kicking, their box kicking, territorial game, that's fine. The crowd will love it. But if you're 10 points down and you're kicking the ball and you're slowing things down, that's where the frustration comes in. Listen, the reality, Adrian said it, if I'm Peter O'Mahony, and even though Stander was brilliant last week, Van der Fleer, any of the forwards, they're all vulnerable to, Conor Murray's vulnerable, they're all vulnerable to change. If Ireland lose tomorrow, these guys might get dropped and could very well be dropped off the team. So if that doesn't motivate them, nothing will, aside from the obvious of winning the game. So I think that will ignite them a little bit, and even if we play well, it doesn't mean we'll win the game. You know,
absolutely.
Wales are a decent side, you know, so it'll be a very tight one, I think. Yeah,
all right, look forward to it. Quinny, thanks for coming in. As always, on this Friday morning, it's 9 minutes past 8. We've lots to come. We've Jonathan Davies and Jeremy Guskett going to join us in studio a little bit later on. David Brady's in studio as well before 9 o'clock to talk all things Football League. We're going to be hear his thoughts on Mayo as well, and plenty more besides. We've Jonathan Sexton's thoughts coming up. First, take a quick ad break.